ready for church this Sunday. I got my finest Sunday go-to-meeting clothes on this morning, right? Now, it's not unusual that I wear jeans to church, but usually I don't wear these jeans that are so bad. And the reason why I'm wearing these clothes is because it's time to do beekeeping after church today. I'm actually going down to Muncie, doing some more bees. And I thought, today we're going to talk about bees. I don't think, this seems very appropriate today. I had a lot of people asking me questions about them recently here at church, and I wanted to share some bee stories. Got stung 3 times yesterday. I don't know if you guys can see the size of this hand, my left hand, still swollen from getting stung. And I get stung frequently, so it's not uncommon, but my hands usually don't swell up this bad. And so had I had a wedding ring on my left hand, I'm sure I would have had to cut it off, just like Mike Horsley had to cut off his wedding ring last week. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? So Mike and I were playing with bees last week. He got stung, hand swelled up, couldn't get the ring off, cutting into circulation. He literally had to cut off his wedding ring. So it happens with bees. You never know what you're going to get into. So why, number one, John, why bees? Why do you like bees? Why do you like playing with bees? We talked about, I wanted to get into beekeeping 10, 15 years ago. I can't remember how long ago it was, maybe 12. John Key, the pastor at Maple Run, knew that I was wanting to get some bees. And so he called me up and said, hey, John, we got some bees in the attic if you want to come get them. The attic of the old sanctuary. We built a new building, and bees were in the attic of the old sanctuary. I said, well, are you sure there are bees? He goes, yeah, I'm sure there are bees. There's honey running down the wall. So sure enough, there were bees. I built a little homemade bee vacuum where I went up there and sucked them all out and took them back to our house in Swayze and set up our first hive. We did pull honey off the first hive, and so we got holy honey, if you will, since it came from the church attic, right? But anyway, I had a great time with those bees, enjoyed it. And since then, I've just been trying to get more and more into beekeeping. It's become kind of a passion, kind of a hobby. So Sundays are for Jesus and for bees. By the way, I stole this one online. I didn't make this one up. If I did, Jesus would have been bigger than the bees. But anyway, it's a nice little graphic. So Mike and I were going to do a cutout of bees in a Gas City church about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And one of the ladies in the Fairmount Bee Club suggested, she goes, hey, will you film that? So I'd like to watch how you do that. And so I said, well, okay, yeah, we'll film it. And so we decided to go ahead and film it. We started putting more and more videos together. And we now have our YouTube channel where we get all the bees. And there's Mike and Craig and I coming back from one of our trips. And that's out on YouTube video now and YouTube land. And I guess one of the reasons why people say, well, why do you like the bees so much? And my standard response all the time is now, when I go out to play with the bees, not getting emails, not getting phone calls, not getting texts, don't have to talk to anybody, just me and the bees. And it's kind of a nice little getaway for me, and hopefully for Mike and everybody, and Craig, and anybody that helps us out, Ann, if she comes out there. Roxanne likes to do the honey. Sean likes to help process the honey and all that good stuff. Luke's been around. We mess with bees, so good little event. So we're gonna start off with some bee trivia here, and I'm just gonna read you the trivia instead of asking you the questions because I don't expect most folks to know this. But here we go. Do you know that a honeybee can fly around 15 miles an hour? That's how fast a bee goes. Bees fly 55,000 miles to bring in 1 pound of honey. 55,000 miles. During her whole life, about 40 days, a worker bee, honeybee, will gather 1/12 of 1 teaspoon of honey. One bee is 1/12 of 1 teaspoon of honey. Bees can see the same colors we see except red. They can also see ultraviolet. Bees stroke their wings 11,400 times a minute. Think about that. That's a lot of flapping of their wings, right? Yesterday, a guy out in Francis Slocum, one of my old friends, called me up and said, hey, we got this huge swarm of bees in the tree. Do you want them? I said, well, sure I want them. He said, well, they're like 35 feet up. So I tried to make some homemade contraption where I could get them out of 35 feet up in the tree. I wasn't sure it was going to work, but I went out there. Huge swarm of bees. But they're like 45 feet up in the tree, not 35. I couldn't get them. I said, well, how long have they been here? They said, just last night. I said, that's the first time you saw them? He said, yeah. He goes, we didn't see them. We heard them all those bees flapping their wings, it sounds like a giant airplane or something flying above your head if you've ever been near a swarm of bees. 11,400 times per minute. It takes approximately 3,500 bees to weigh 1 pound. That's how much, in terms of weight, they weigh. Let's see. The honeybee is the only insect that produces food eaten by man. Now, you can eat cockroaches, you can eat grasshoppers, you can eat crickets, right? You can eat termites. Mike and I have both done that. You can eat some of these things, but this is the only insect that produces a food that we as humans can eat. Honeybees produce beeswax from 8 glands on the underside of their abdomen. The queen bee can live for about 2 to 3 years. That's the longest life of a bee. The queen bee lives the longest. Everybody else dies pretty quick. Fermented honey, known as mead, so it's an alcohol. Fermented honey, known as mead, is the most ancient fermented beverage that we have on record. So honey's been around since man's been around. Then there's a thing called propolis, if you've ever heard about propolis. Propolis is made from a sticky plant and tree resin, and the bees use it as a glue and antibacterial substance in their hive. So one of the reasons why a lot of people talk about bees and honey and the importance of bees, I guess you could really say that bees are man's best friend, not dogs. You know what life would be like without bees? Of the 100 crops most consumed by human beings on the planet Earth, 70 of them require bees to pollinate. Without bees, you wouldn't have these food items. If you're a coffee drinker, no more coffee. No bees, no coffee. Nuts, berries, apples, melons, grapes, all require pollinators, all require bees. Alfalfa, the number one food source for beef, requires bees. No bees, no beef. No beef, no dairy, right? Say goodbye to your milk, your ice cream, anything you like that with dairy products in it requires bees. Bees are pollinators. From a health perspective, I'm just learning more and more about this all the time. People say that honey, well, it's great for allergies, all that good stuff. A lot of people are into homeopathic health stuff. Honey is supposed to be good for your allergies. Then there's the propolis, is that antibacterial thing they create in the hive. A lot of people will use a propolis tincture to put on wounds, to put on all kinds of stuff. People, for thousands of years, they have used honey on wounds as an antiseptic. I've recently learned about apitherapy, and I immediately thought of Nancy Wood when I saw this video 3 or 4 weeks ago. One of the guys I watch on YouTube, another beekeeper, real famous beekeeper, he's great, going through a horrible bout of shingles. And that, Nancy, you had shingles several years ago, right? I remember you telling us about it at church. I knew how much pain you were in. This guy, I'd never seen shingles before. I'd never actually seen them. He takes off his shirt, and he's got tons of open wounds that reminded me of kind of like bed sores. Pain was not going away. Nothing would work. He had one of his beekeepers grab the bees one at a time and put them near the wound to sting them. And apitherapy is using bee stings to heal your body. He had a great big disclaimer. He said, I can't promise this is going to relieve anybody's pain. I don't know if it's going to work or not. For him, it did work. The bee stings relieve the pain of the shingles. That's not medical advice. Medicine, you consult your family physician before you do any of this, right? I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just saying, I'm just sharing what some people think about bees and how important they are to man in terms of medicine as well. But they can be good for medicine. There are at least 71 verses in the Bible that refer to bees or honey, or a combination of the two. They recently discovered a whole bunch of beehives that they believe were owned by King Solomon. So those are the oldest beehives that we've found on planet Earth right now. But eat honey, my son, for it is good. Honey from the comb is sweet to your taste. Know also that wisdom is like honey for you, If you find it, there's a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. It's Proverbs. There's tons of them. Matthew 3:4, you guys probably can't read these, and I'm not sure that I can either. But on the right here, kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul. That's Proverbs 16. It's through and through the importance of honey and how much honey plays into things. This comic strip says this: be hardworking and energetic. Be mostly docile, but when threatened, get very angry. Jesus gives the bee attitudes, right? Okay, so Christianity, the bee, at least in medieval times, was a symbol, an image of Christ. So the bee was used to also symbolize Christ. If you go to Rome, some of the old cathedrals, you'll see honeybees throughout the magnificent cathedrals they built. The honey reflects Jesus' sweet and gentle character. The stinger of the bee, pertains to justice and the cross. So it's a symbol of Jesus as well. Here's a little image there. Help pollinate the world with the pure love of Christ. Just like we need pollinators to eat, God depends on us to pollinate the rest of the world and to share his love with others, right? Okay, so it was important. Bees were very important to the spread of Christianity. We found this out not long ago. I can't remember how many months ago it was at the house. Power went out briefly. And I was excited. Hey, I got an idea. And I went out to, we grabbed the old beeswax candles that we made just playing around one day out of beeswax, and we lit these beeswax candles. It was amazing how much those little small candles lit up our room. Okay, even, in today's modern times. Do you know where we'd be in society if it wasn't for the invention of the candle? I mean, how much more could the world do once they made beeswax candles? You think, man, John, that's stupid. Think about it. Just think about it with me here, okay? Honey, food, all that good stuff. So here we go. Give you a little rundown about the honeybee. There's 3 bees in a hive. You've got worker bees, you've got drones, and you got the queen bee. Now, the queen bee and the worker bees are both females. Drones are males. What are drones good for? Nothing, Mom says. Nothing. She's absolutely correct. All they do is eat, breed, and die. That's the only thing they do. They don't even have a stinger. If you see a big old drone bee in your beehive, it can't sting you. It does not have a stinger. It is born to eat and to breed, and it dies right after breeding. Okay? I'll spare you the details, but it's done. It's accomplished its duty, and it dies. The beehive lives in a colony. Colony, typically we see in North America, we typically use these Langstroth hives created by a German priest, Langstroth. Anyway, hives, they're in a frame right here, and you can see the bees on the right-hand side here. I can't use this pointer. There we go. So each one of these are frames. There's 10 frames in here. The bees build comb on either side of the frame. So I can pull a frame out, which I'll show you here in a few minutes. Pull a frame out and get the bees on both sides. Okay, that's where they lay their eggs. That's where they store their honey. That's where they gather pollen, do all that good stuff. That's the colony. Anne had asked me a couple questions after we returned from a beekeeping conference earlier this year in January. And when she asked me these questions, I started pondering this. We can't relate to bees as humans because the bees are part of a colony. A single bee does not live on its own. As people, we like to think, I'm a people, you're a people. I'm a bee, you're a bee. That's not how it is. The bee does not think of the bee as being a bee. The bee is a cell of the colony. Okay, a bee by itself cannot survive. It's impossible. You have to have multiple bees. Kind of like a cell in your body. We have cells. You got white blood cells, you got red blood cells, you got cancer cells, you got all kinds of cells. I don't know what kind of cells you have, but you got cells in your body. Those cells can't exist without a body. The bees can't exist without the colony. Does that make sense? So they think of themselves as a giant part of one living, breathing organism is the colony. Now the cells will go out and perform different duties, but the cells, the worker bees going out, foraging, getting new food, bringing honey, nectar, whatever back, they'll do things independently, but it's all for the sake of the colony. That's it, not for the sake of themselves individually. A lone bee cannot survive. Found these online. You can make your beehives look like anything you want to. Some people pretty them up, paint them up, put go boilers on them, whatever you want to do, put on the beehives. Some of them made them into looking like churches. I think they're kind of cute. Which made me think, how is a colony of bees like the church? We can't think of Christians as individuals. We do, all the time. But I think that's a mistake. We are cells of the church. We're a member of the church. When I talk about the church, I'm not talking necessarily about only Back Creek, the global church. We are, as Christians, we're a member of Christ's church. We are not individuals. Some members of our church may be healthy. Some members of our church may be diseased. And I'm not talking about a physical illness. They may not be on the same path of Christianity as others may be. You've got mature Christians, you get immature Christians. But they're all part of one living, breathing organism, the church. We've said multiple times that there are no lone rangers in Christianity. When Christ came here to share his love with us, he wanted us to reach the lost and make disciples, not to go off by yourself into some lone wilderness and stay there for the rest of your life. Because we are to make disciples. Just like living in a colony, we have to have more. That is part of Christ's kingdom. In a colony, you got the drone, you got the queen, and you got the worker. All those bees have different jobs. They go through different stages in life. At 1 to 2 days old, when the bee hatches or comes out, their job is to clean the cells. They start with the one that they were born in. They clean it out, get all the wax out of there. They help keep all the brood warm. The brood's the baby bees that are in there yet to be born. At 3 to 5 days old, their job is to feed the older larvae, okay, the older babies in the cell, in the hive. 6 to 11 days old, they have to feed the youngest larvae. 12 to 17 days old, they finally leave the hive and they start producing wax, building comb, doing other duties, carrying food. 18 to 21 days old, they're protecting the hive entrances and have guard duty. 22 days to the end of their life, at 40 to 45 days, they fly from the hive to collect pollen, nectar, and water. And then they die of old age. Okay? And I think about this. How does this compare to the church? We all have spiritual gifts. We all have different talents. And as we grow in Christ, and as we grow physically in age, the talents we use, the gifts we use to build up the kingdom change. Right? Some of us may have been, the absolute best, hardest worker ever. Okay? Could have been trustees of the church. Anything around here happened, landscaping, whatever, we were able to do it. Now, I'm not there anymore. We're not there anymore. It's time for the younger bees to do that. Okay? Our skills, our talents have changed. What I know now to help out the church is completely different than what I knew at 18 to help out the church. You definitely would not have wanted to have me up front at the age of 18. Some of you might not want me up front at the age of 50, I don't know. But skills change, talents change. As we age, we all grow. Same with the bees. What kind of bees are there out there? In terms of the honeybees, there's African bees, buckfast bees, Carnolian bees, Caucasian bees, Cardigan bees, Italian bees, and Russian bees. Okay, now all these bees can breed with one another, I think for the most part, make a cross and produce more honeybees. They're not like breeding a dachshund with a Great Dane. I mean, these are all a little closer in terms of similarities. They each have strengths and weaknesses in terms of how much propolis they make, how quickly they make honey, how quickly they swarm, and all that good stuff. Well, when I think about the church, we got Catholics, Anglicans, Lutherans, Methodists, Presbyterians, Quakers, Brethren, all kinds of different denominations that still makes up the global church. Okay? As a beekeeper, when we start looking at things, people typically will call us because their bees swarmed or they see a swarm. The hardest part of being a beekeeper is keeping your colony alive. That's the hardest part. Okay, everybody's worried about if my bees survive winter into spring, yes, because there's so many beehives, colonies that collapse, they die for one reason or another. So here's two terms that we talk about a lot in beekeeping: swarming and absconding. Swarming is when a portion of the colony leaves the hive with the queen to create a new hive in a new location. When this happens, a significant number of bees will remain in the original hive, raise a new queen, and continue to thrive. That is swarming. Okay, so half of them take off, they raise a new queen, now you have two healthy hives. You have one hive, swarm goes away, one stays, swarm leave, you got two hives now. So when I get a call about a swarm call, I love it because that swarm that we find has got a queen in it. And I can immediately put them in a box and we got a brand new second hive. I had one on my own property yesterday, now I've got another hive. Okay, it's easy to catch them. Absconding is when the bees completely abandon their hive. All or almost all the bees leave the hive along with the queen. They may leave behind some young bees who can't fly yet, because they don't start flying until like day 12. Unhatched brood and pollen, but when you see this, it's an indication that something's wrong. Something's very wrong. Sometimes a hive will dive out because the queen's dead. The queen just dies. I mean, natural causes, and they don't have another cell to produce another queen. But that's absconding. So swarming is when they take off to create a new hive and leave another healthy hive in behind. Absconding is when something's just fatally wrong and they all take off. And I think about this in the church. Back Creek Friends, swarming. Have we ever swarmed? You gotta go to your history books now. When Back Creek in North Carolina came to create Back Creek in Fairmount, Indiana, that was a swarm. They took their church people and came over here and planted a new church. When Back Creek helped to create Oak Ridge, Center, Fairmount Friends, Little Ridge Friends, Bethel Friends, Upland Friends. You can't plant a church without going, right? If we're going to start a new church, we're going to plant a new Back Creek #2 church. We're going to do a church plant right now. In order to do so, some of us are going to have to go to plant that church. That'd be a swarm in the ways of the church, right? Here's what scares me. Here's another good point. Swarming is sometimes worth mentioning that a colony could swarm itself to death. If Back Creek, and this is with bees, but let's talk about churches. If we were on fire to church plant, it's all we're going to do here at Back Creek. It's all we want to do. Church plant. You four go here, you go here, you go. We may have just swarmed to death at Back Creek Friends because there's nobody left at Back Creek, or too few people left at Back Creek. Here's what scares me in the church today. Absconding. Absconding is when something goes horribly wrong and you're left with nothing. How many churches today are absconding? And if we go back to the list of the swarms that Back Creek planted, our Back Creek swarms, how many of those churches are still in existence, or how many are no longer in existence? Little Ridge, are they still around? Center's Jonesboro, right? What about, anybody else remember those on the list? Oak Ridge is gone. But this has been going on forever, right? Paul, in theory, people say Paul was known as being a church planter. Well, where are those churches today? Most of those churches that he planted have been absconded. They're gone for one reason or the other. Paul's real legacy is writing the New Testament and leaving the New Testament behind. Here's what scares me about absconding churches. 1 in 5 churches may close due to the pandemic, and many churches were closing before the pandemic. 1 in 3 Christians do not attend, or 1 in 3 Christians, according to research, attends church today in the United States. That means 2 people that consider themselves Christians don't even go to church. Or maybe they're Creasters. Christmas and Easter, right? And that's it. Absconding churches are a problem. Sometimes we do hive inspections. Yesterday, where I got stung was doing a hive inspection. And I was up there, and you have to pull the frames out, and what we're doing is looking for the health of the hive. I'm trying to find that queen bee. I'm trying to find eggs, trying to make sure that that hive is healthy, ready to go. The queen right here, by the way, if you can see her, that's the queen. A queenless hive is in danger. And it's kind of funny, when I start moving the frames around, if Mike and I are out doing hive inspections or whatever, I tear this box off, I put this box to the side. If the queen is over here, these bees will start making a loud rumbling sound. They know that the queen's gone, and they're not happy. Sometimes they don't have that leadership. I don't know what goes on, but they are not happy. And I thought about that sometimes in churches. You know, when you go through a leadership change, sometimes there's internal conflict and things just don't go awry. I don't know what to say. You lose a pastor, you're in a pastoral change, and you know, things just don't go, I mean, things just go south sometimes. But an awful lot like a church. Supersedureship cells. These are cells that the bees will create inside a hive, not to swarm when they're getting ready to take off and go somewhere else and plant a new church. These are cells that they create inside to replace the existing queen. So for example, in a larger church, or even in this church, we may have some of the youth eventually grow up, want to be the pastor, and replace the current pastor. Okay, that's a superseder cell. That happens. And we see a lot of churches where they grow pastors up through the ranks. That's a good thing. That's a good sign. But supersedure, if you see those cells, you know that they're going to kick that queen out the door. They either think the queen's unhealthy, not doing a good job, whatever, they're going to kick her out the door. Swarm cells are in the bottom. And they start making these, and the cutout that Mike and I did and Craig did last week, we found 40, 50 different swarm cells. So they were getting ready to split and make church plants and go everywhere, okay, in the church world. I think it's great. The bees, it's funny when I start to research the bees, the more I learn about bees, the more I realize I don't know about bees. And I think it's a lot like being a Christian. The more I learn about Christ and try to learn more and grow, the more I realize I don't know. I think there's 2 things that I can study the rest of my entire life and never know everything, and that's Christianity and beekeeping. There's too much knowledge. There's too much to learn. But it's fun, because I can always learn something new, and I like that. And that's what probably keeps me interested in both, you know, church and beekeeping. I'm not sure there could be 2 more closer related activities. As I understand and grow and learn about bees and understand that that colony is one unit, even though we look at it as 40,000 bees in that one unit, those bees view themselves as one combined unit. If our church would act more like a colony instead of individual bees, and I'm not just saying Back Creek here, I'm talking about the global church, if we could view ourselves that way, we would be so much more effective for the kingdom. But without bees, there's no pollination. And without the church, there's no pollination to create new disciples and new believers. So as you go out this week, and I know some of you it's boring, I get it, but some of you have been asking me about bees, so that's my presentation on bees. This is the season. The season is ripe right now for bee swarms and to catch bees. The season is ripe right now for us to tell our family and friends about Back Creek, about Jesus, and about the eternal kingdom. So be a beekeeper this week. Sundays are for Jesus and for bees. Remember that. When I say that, that means go out and tell everybody about Back Creek, about what we have going on here, and about Jesus. Okay, because Sundays are for Jesus and the bees.